Reading with your kids.
Hola, niho, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guests today, Michele Assarasakorn and Nathan Fairbairn. They're here to celebrate their graphic novel, PAWS, Gabby Gets It Together. Before we invite Michele and Nathan into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by April Cox and her website, selfpubmadesimple.com. We know that you love reading with your kids, but I bet there's a lot of you out there who are dreaming about writing for kids. Am I right about that? But you're saying to yourself, it's so hard to get published. I'm going to get a shoebox full of rejection letters, and I'm going to be querying and getting in touch with agents, and it is so hard. I'll never be an author. Well, imagine this. Imagine you're holding your own book right there in your hands in just a matter of months. Seems impossible? It's not. It's possible with help from April Cox and Self-Publishing Made Simple. April has helped thousands of authors with her programs and services and has a special offer just for you. Get a free consultation by visiting her website, selfpubmadesimple.com. And before long, we could be talking about your fantastic children's book right here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada. Our guests today are here to celebrate a great graphic novel. It's called PAWS, Gabby Gets It Together. Please welcome to the show Michele Assarasakorn and Nathan Fairbairn. Hey, Michele, Nathan, how are you guys?
I'm doing great, Jed. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good morning to you, or good morning from here.
Well, it's still morning. And thank you both for getting up this early to be with us. Nathan, can you let us know what PAWS is all about?
Sure, yeah. So PAWS is the story of three kind of unlikely best friends. There's Mindy Kim, Gabby Jordan, and Priya Gupta, who are extremely different girls. They don't really have much in common. They've got different socioeconomic backgrounds, different ethnicities, different interests, different hobbies. And so they don't seem like best friends, material, but what unites them is the fact that they are all obsessed with animals, especially pets, dogs, cats. They want to get their hands on some animals in some way, shape, or form. But the problem is that they are all frustrated in that desire. Gabby's father is this obsessive neat freak who will not have a box of cat litter in his house and dog hair all over his couches. And Mindy lives with her single mom, and they live in a rental that does not allow pets of any kind. And then Priya's mother is very allergic to animals. And so all three of them are very frustrated in their pursuit of the fluffy ones. And so they form this friendship on this basis, and then they just come up with a plan to try to get their hands on some pets. And it's a multi-stage plan that fails spectacularly. And then they kind of fall backwards into this opportunity to become dog walkers. And so PAWS is born. PAWS, they decide they want to name their business PAWS. And they decide that PAWS needs to be an acronym of some kind. So they kind of force an acronym to work there. So PAWS stands for Pretty Awesome Walkers. So they steal the S from walkers to make the S on PAWS. And so they found this business, and as the business grows, And as they've met their shared desire for animals, the kind of cracks that were always maybe there in their friendship start to show a bit more. They don't really have that same thing driving them to keep them together. So the realities of running a business and keeping a friendship together, it all kind of comes to a head. And that's kind of what the book is about.
It sounds like a really, really fun book. Now, Nathan was sharing with me before we started recording that the publishers have given him the title of author and given Michele the title of illustrator. But Michele, Nathan was saying that you very much were an author in your own right in the creation of this book. Tell us about that. Tell us about the creation, the process of illustrating this novel.
Well, I guess Nathan approached me with his story because this is based off of his experience with his daughter. And I guess the reason why we want to be labeled as co-creators is because we didn't really have a visual aesthetic yet before the book started. And so when we met up, I did a couple of designs and collaborated with Nathan on how we wanted the book to look. And so after those designs were done, we started drawing pages, and it was a really collaborative process with Nathan's scripting and me sort of sending layouts back and deciding what worked best for the book. And also, Nathan and I are both colorists in Vancouver, and because I'm taking on the penciler or the inker, the person who draws the comic, Nathan just wanted to help me with my workload, and plus he's an awesome colorist, and so he colors the book and letters it as well. And so the whole visual aesthetic of the book is totally both of us together, not just me.
I think a lot of people might be surprised to hear that in the process of illustration are done by different people. I mean, I know I always thought of the artists, they sit down, they draw the words in and they do the colors and all this. But Michele, Nathan, you're telling me it's a shared, it's a team process.
I think if you're doing it right, it is. Yeah, especially comics. I think there's a difference in the way that like an illustrated kids book is created and the way that a comic book is created. I feel like you have your prose on the one page and then you have your illustration on the other page with like your classic children's illustrated book. And there might not be that much, collaboration between those two sides. There'll probably be some initial conversations and then, they'll find the right artist to match the script. But there's not that kind of interplay of storytelling that you need to have with comics. So I do write a script, but then I send that script to Michele and she reads it. And I like to think of it as I'm telling a story to Michele and she's the only one who will ever read my story. Everyone else is reading Michele's version of my story. So she reads my script and then she interprets it and does the layouts and does her own storytelling on that, right? Because that's what cartooning is. It's telling stories through sequential art. And so she is a storyteller just as much as I am. She's telling the story that I roughed out and told to her, and then she's, making
it's
it
like
a comic.
Yeah, I'm like the visual translator of putting Nathan's ideas and thoughts into something that people could see on paper.
Yeah. I like to say that you could have the worst cartoonist in the world draw a comic, and it's a comic. And you could have the best writer in the world write a comic book script, and it will never be a comic until you have an artist actually draw it. So the cartoonist, the artist, is much more important to making comics, in my opinion, than the writer. And I think I can say that because I'm the quote-unquote writer of the book, mm-hmm. and I know what I did, and I know what Michele did, and I'm telling you, she is an author of this book. Well, yeah, I'm a bit militant about this. It's also why I insisted that Michele have top billing in the on the cover credit as well.
Well, that's really generous. My daughter is in the music industry, and she would be really, really delighted because anytime we go to see an artist, and it's the main artist, and his or her name is on the marquee, when that artist takes time to introduce each member of the band, my daughter's like, yeah, because, you know, you wouldn't be out there by yourself. You'd sound pretty lame.
Yeah. It's funny. I used to play bass in bands in my younger days when I still had hair and and energy. And I felt the same way, that it is a group and a group project, and the front person taking credit is never sat right with me.
Yeah. Michele, is this the first project that you and Nathan worked together on?
Yes, it is. It's actually the first book I drew, because I was a colorist and a painter, a visual development person for a long time after school. And so when Nathan and I met up, he convinced me that I should draw a book, and I did.
Oh,
she sure did.
Yeah. Well, this is unusual in that most times, we hear that authors and illustrators really don't have a lot of communication between each other. And it sounds like you came together to create this book from the start.
Yeah, we both live in the same neighborhood. And when I moved to Vancouver, I was looking for friends because I missed having that kind of studio work environment. And we met up for coffee and then just got along really well. And so Nathan, I learned that I liked to draw as well on the side. And so he pitched me this idea, and it was so good that I was like, okay, let's try it.
Yeah, and I think both of us coming from the comics world rather than the children's book world, we're much more used to collaboration anyway. Like comics is like, I worked for Marvel and DC and for 15 years before I got into writing kids books. So making those books, you're making, a comic every month, and it's got to come out every month. So there's a lot of collaboration, and it's very much an assembly line type work. You get a script from the writer, you get usually a penciler will pencil in the story, and then an inker will go over those pencils with ink, and then the colorist comes in, and then the letterer comes in. This is all coordinated by an editor. And so there's a lot of communication and a lot of collaboration and a lot of people checking their work with people who came before and people who are coming after. And so that's just naturally how I think people from the comics world work.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, Michele and I talk on floor. We used to meet up a lot before she had a baby.
And the pandemic.
And then the pandemic happened, but we still check in on text and FaceTime.
Wow.
Try to do it every day.
Well, congratulations on becoming a mom.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Nathan, was there anything when you pitched the idea and started speaking and you received the first art from Michele, was there anything that went, whoa, yes, that's I never realized about this character. Thank you. And that, that then inspired you to take the story in maybe a slightly different direction than you had originally thought?
Probably not the story overall, like the general arc of the story. But absolutely, I think the characters were revealed to me through the way Michele acted them. Because that's another role of the cartoonist. They're not just drawing the people on there. She has to act she has to deliver the lines. She has to, show the characters reacting to the lines, and some of the facial expressions, absolutely, changed the way that I had scripted a line delivery. Sometimes I would have written a script that, someone says something and she's just sold it so well in the acting or the cartooning that I'm like, I don't even need that line there. It's obvious what the reaction is to that thing. So let's just let the art, the visual storytelling stand on its own. It doesn't need me to, put in words what the reader can clearly see through the art. Yeah. So there's a lot of that going on. A lot of, that's one of the things I enjoy about doing the lettering of the book, because I write the script and then she draws it and then I color it and then I go in with the letters. And that's when I can really spend time crafting the dialogue and, settling all the words into place on the page. And very often I realize that, oh, she's drawn this, so well. I can totally change. I don't have to have as much exposition. I don't need to, explain things because it's so clear on the page. So, there's a lot of that sort of thing going on. Yeah. And I think the more she drew the characters, it also helped me, realize who the characters were.
Yeah. That's one thing that I don't think people realize is that, when you're watching a TV show or a movie or reading a comic or a graphic novel, I think a lot of people focus on the person that's speaking and not realizing how important the person's reactions to those words, to those actions are. Is that something that came to you as you're illustrating, Michele, or had you always known that?
Known about the action and the reaction of the surrounding characters.
How important the reactions were.
It was actually, it was super important to me. And I actually hadn't realized the kind of main speaker centralized attention came across until I read it with Nathan's lettering. And then actually I kind of had to navigate around that as well, because when I used to draw in animation or games, it was a lot, I guess because you're watching it on screen, you can focus on everybody else's reaction, almost the same attention with the person speaking. But with comics, I think that kids may center around the lettering and then move on without realizing. So I don't put as much emphasis anymore, but it is still very important to me, because the good thing with comics is that you could spend as much time reading and studying the art as well. And so I want those reactions to resonate with people when they go back and look at it, and gives them a lot more depth and context to the story when they go through a second time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is one thing about a graphic novel or a comic. They're like a lot of picture books that parents complain, I have to read this book 4,000 times. Kids, when they start reading independently and they're reading a comic or they're reading a graphic novel, I find that they're reading it over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think that's probably why, the kids' graphic novels are still really, I think they're really popular. I think they sell really well because kids want to own them because they want to be able to reread them multiple times. Both of my children have extensive graphic novel collections, and they will, my son, I think, just finished his third read through of the entire My Hero Academia manga series, which is like 30 volumes.
Wow.
And before he got into manga, he loved Bone by Jeff Smith. And he had, I have my own copy. I had to get my own copy because he stole my copy. And it's basically the covers come off because he's read this whole 1,300 page, comic. I think he says he's read it 5 times cover to cover.
Wow.
And so every time, you go through, you might not appreciate all of the subtle character acting and the little flourishes and the little details the first time through because you're so interested in story, right? Mm-hmm. Kids, I think, are very driven by story. They're driven by plot. They want to know what happens next. Yeah. But then on subsequent readings, they can spend a little more time appreciating everything else that goes into telling that story.
Yeah. Speaking of appreciation, Michele, one of the mistakes I made when I was raising my kids and when my son was in middle school, he loved graphic novels. He loved anime and manga, and I supported that. We got out and we brought him to the comic shops, and when I was on the road, I would pick up a graphic novel that I thought he would enjoy. But I find myself too many times going in his room and just kind of exasperated saying, would you please pick up a book that doesn't have pictures in it for once, just once? And I didn't realize at that time that reading graphic novels is reading. And graphic novels are literature. And I don't want parents to make the same mistake that I made. Just really appreciate that your kids are reading when they're reading graphic novels.
I couldn't have said that any better.
I actually learned 2 different languages from my experience reading comic books. And it was because I'm from Thailand and I grew up in Thailand, but I went to an English speaking school. And so I had no formal, Thai education. the comic books that were available to me were mostly in Japanese and Thai. And so I would sort of switch in between those two languages. And I was drawn in from the pictures first. And so once I started learning what the phonetic, how to read the letters phonetically, I was reading Thai and Japanese through comic books. Wow. So that's how I picked up those languages and am able to read and write.
Wow, that's incredible. Is there much of a difference between what is popular graphic novel-wise in Thailand and Japan? And is it different than what's popular here in the States and in Canada?
I think that a lot of it is kind of globalized now, so I don't think there's much of a difference, but I couldn't really give you an up-to-date check on that because I've moved since I was 18, so that was quite some time ago. But yeah, back then it was very limited what was available in terms of North American comics in Thailand, mostly because it was colored, it was expensive to reprint. And so we, being, in Southeast Asia, we just imported a lot of Japanese manga and then translated those because those were printed on newsprint almost. It was super cheap. So you would get a manga for basically $1 equivalent. And kids would just go through those like, Sunday comics and then collect those or donate them, throw them away. And they're just black and white paper. So yeah, it's quite different now, I think.
Yeah. Well, Nathan, is this going to be an ongoing collaboration between you and Michele? And will we see future chapters of PAWS?
Yes, absolutely. It's currently it was sold as a 3-book series. So the second book is coming out this November is the hope. We're just putting the finishing touches on it. So we've got to hit a deadline or two along the way, but fingers crossed that it all goes well. And the second book will be out in November, and then the third book will probably be out in the following year, probably the next November. And yeah, we're really, really happy with it. I think the more we work together, the better it gets. We love the first book. We're really proud of it, but we think the second book is even better. And I'm sure we'll feel the same way when the third book is coming around.
Awesome. Hey, Michele, can you tell everybody where they can go to find out more about PAWS, Gabby Gets It Together, and more about you and Nathan?
You could find out more about PAWS on the Penguin Razorbill website and also our websites at msasake.com and nathanfairbairn.com.
Yeah. Awesome. Or just go anywhere books are sold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your local bookstore should carry
every
it.
bookshop I've done the rounds in my own city, and it's been in every bookshop I've gone to, which is really gratifying.
And if your local bookstore doesn't have it, you can just pick up the phone, give them a call, and ask them very nicely if they would.
Nice.
They would supply it, and that would be very helpful.
Support your local bookstores.
Absolutely. We had a great time speaking to the authors and illustrators of PAWS, Gabby Gets It Together, Michele Assarasakorn and Nathan Fairbairn. How did I do with that?
Yeah.
All right.
It was good. It was good.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Shannon Stalker. Shannon's returning to the podcast to celebrate her brand new book, Listen, How Evelyn Glennie, a Deaf Girl, Changed Percussion. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, authors, please be sure to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page and learn how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. First, I want to start by thanking our guests, Nathan Fairbairn and Michele Assarasakorn. Please be sure to check out PAWS, Gabby Gets It Together. I also want to thank our sponsor, April Cox, selfpubmadesimple.com. Be sure to get your free one-on-one consultation. Find out how you could become a published author in just a matter of months and perhaps become a guest here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Selfpubmadesimple.com. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.